Okay, going to Fort King George to celebrate the 300th anniversary of 1721 when the fort was first established over here in Darien. Fort King George. This is the information about what's going on for the anniversary. And this is just a replica of what Fort King George looked like. 3 stories, possibly 4 because they got one in the bottom too. Okay, about to enter the fort. Here's the moat. The palisades would be in there, the sticks. See the sticks sticking up, but that's part of the fence, but they would have had them in there. And going into here, oh, they put a new staircase there. Okay, we're inside Fort King George. There's the barracks and the different places.
Went to convalesce while he slept up the stairs. But when the doctor decided he was moving to surgery, I said, well, we'll use this as the counting house because we're doing trade with the English here at the fort. And this place was so remote, including pirates, smugglers. We have accounts of Pensacola Spanish and the French at Dauphin Island trading goods with each other almost weekly, even though the 2 countries were at war, because they just realized there's nobody coming to bring us supplies if they're fighting in Europe. So they just traded goods rather than fighting each other. So whatever happens in the war, we survive or we don't. Let's just feed each other and let the people back home take care of them. So they come over and say, what do you have? We have more than enough of this, and they traded equal parts for what they could get. So they were actually quite amiable during a time of war. But like I said, normally they wouldn't allow smuggling, or they'd prevent it from other countries here because Barnwell was trying to get a foothold. So he didn't want to trade with anybody, but he'd trade with any English pirate or not if he could get the goods. But I do a demonstration here about coins and currency and treasure because it's so much a part of the life of a pirate specifically. And I always ask a few questions. For example, this is a coin of Ireland. This is a coin of Switzerland. They're from the same time period.
Switzerland. Cool.
They'd both be made out of shilling, but this one's 2.5 times the size of this one. Why is this one so much bigger? Worth 2.5 times this because it has more silver. So if they're so unequally cast, those are the 2 extremes. This is more of a standard. This is the Kingdom of Aragon in Spain, and that's closer to the size of the coin should be as a standard throughout all of Europe. But both of these coins are based on arrogance and sovereignty. The King of Switzerland realized that their economy was booming. It was just completely out of control. They were making so much money that he went to the mint and he says, I want you to make all of our coins 2.5 times the size of everybody else in Europe. And the minters said, well, we're using 2.5 times the amount of silver. That doesn't make any sense. He goes, yes, but it'll show all of Europe how well we're doing. Arrogance. He flaunted their wealth and said, we're doing so much better than all the rest of you. And even though it devalued the coin because people would trade it so they could get more silver, it didn't matter because they actually had enough money to afford it. So to flaunt their arrogance. And this one is also an arrogant coin, but you'll notice it's smaller than the standard because this is for the King of Ireland. There was no King of Ireland. He was a pretender. So he minted his own coin, but he had less resources. So these are both arrogance, but they showed 2 different economies. Now, that's about the size of a U.S. quarter. That's actually from Persia. But I put that all the way back to the 1600s. And that's 2 bits. We call a quarter 2 bits. The Spanish real, which is also called a piece of 8 or an 8-bit coin. Because pure silver is soft enough, you can take shears and you can cut it into 8 pieces to make change. You change the coin, and that's where the word change comes from.
Wow.
2 pieces of 8 is a quarter of the whole, so a quarter is 2 bits.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I didn't know you could actually cut the coins back then. That's pretty interesting.
So you get these little pie wedges, and it was like having nickels and half dollars. Yeah. That is a shilling. And they used to do that because when they couldn't make change, small enough change, they would take a standard silver coin and you take a piece of shears and you clip it off by ounce. So if you went to a place to buy bread, they had scales there. And they said, well, it's an ounce of silver. You just trim off an ounce on the scales. and then you could get a loaf of bread. Because if you didn't have farthings or smaller change, you couldn't do the day-to-day purchases like buying an apple or doing simple exchanges. So they'd shave them. You could look at a coin and see if it was shaved, because a shaved coin wouldn't have the knurling they were putting on some coins. And if you saw the knurling was gone, you knew the coin had been trimmed. And we have another term from that we still use today, because every coin has a face. And when you destroy the coin, you destroy the face value of the coin. But yes, they'd go to a repository and an exchange and they'd melt it down.
Oh, okay.
Because the government wanted to keep melting them because they would slowly deform and wear, and you want to keep a standard so you can do exchanges of equal silver rate. And so that's why all the coins in Europe are the same size. They're all round and about the same size, even though they have different names. So when you trade across a border, you know you're getting the rate, like the what's it called, the gold standard. You're getting the silver and gold standard. And that's why almost every coin in Europe was uniformly the same size, so you didn't have to look at it, you just traded it by weight. But then you go to India, and they have a closed economy. They don't trade with many people, so they have their own shape and currency. So they went with pragmatism.
That's Indian. I've never seen a square coin before. That's interesting.
It butts right up against each other, and it's perfect for square boxes. Whereas if you stack coins together, you lose you get negative space.
Yeah.
So they can pack more coins and make them smaller and have a larger amount of exchanging change for small purchases. The Japanese, at the same time, had the Rio.
That's cool.
The gold Rio is that shape because they didn't trade with anybody, so it didn't have to look like anybody else's money. They could choose their entire different look or aesthetic.
Nice.
Closed economy, nothing went in or out of Japan. They were isolationists. But over time, the oval became flat on the sides because they realized when you mint these, you can stack them together like we do with $20 and $100 bills, and you wrap a piece of rice paper around it, and you have bundles in equal numbers. Oh. And the flat edges also butt up against each other in boxes, so it stores better. Then along come the Spanish, and they start finding gold in the New World. If you want to pick that up, you can.
Shares? Where's our shares?
You've been paid. You've been paid.
Gold. Yeah, it's got the Oriental symbols on it.
Yeah, that's Japanese, and that's a treasure bar from Japan. The core of that is lead to simulate the weight of gold.
It's pretty heavy.
But when the Spanish began exporting gold from the New World, they would melt it and make little drops and quick stamp it, and you get what's called a rough cob. They would fill bags like this, tens of thousands and thousands of coins. But the problem is, every time you have to go count them to see how much you have to do 1, 2, 3. If you lose count in the thousands, like there's 3,000 coins in this bag when I started this week. You lose count at 2,984 and you got to start over. So the counts are like, why don't we just make the same mold? We know the exact ounces by bar weight for each of the bars, and it's easier to transport. Plus, if you drop a bag loading it onto a ship, you don't have to go down into the water and collect one coin at a time. You can find these faster. They're easier to store on a ship. And the first time they took a big treasure fleet across the Atlantic in a storm, the bags rotted from the salt water. And a big wave hit all of the ships in the fleet, and you had tens of thousands of pounds of coin that suddenly shifted to one side of the boat. So it's like all the ballast holding you down in the water went to one side, and the whole fleet barrel rolled and sunk. And they realized we can never take loose coin again, but we can put ballast of gold at the very bottom of the ship, and it'll steady the ship. We have to totally rethink how we transport this gold, because they lost the ship, the men on the ship. They had to dive to find it, and it was scattered all over the bottom of the sea. And yeah, there were so many issues it created that they started rethinking the whole process.